Okay, let's do another example. This one we're going to use the familiar Lagrange coffee data set. That's the same data set you've been using, and it's going to be similar to what we did up above with the Manessa Bakery. We're going to perform all the necessary information modeling. That includes things like data cleaning, combining data, so joins, transforming the data, unpivoting, pivoting, and then actual information modeling, which I call feature engineering. That's just creating new columns to get to something that the information that we need to answer questions. So, for instance, what was the product sales mix for March 2025? Well, we're going to have to get the product sales mix, and we know that we have to do kind of the pie and piece of the pie. So, I'm going to show you how to do like roast mix here. So, I'm going to show you, we're going to generate a very similar graph as we did up above. So it's going to be a graph like this, but the graph is going to be, each line is going to be a separate roast mix, a roast type in Lagrange Coffee's data. So that's like light, medium, dark, espresso. So we're going to have 4 lines. We're still going to go across the time of month year. So we're going to break it down into month year, and then we're going to have product mix or sales mix on the y-axis. Well, it's actually not product mix, it's roast mix. And so we're doing the same thing. In class we did sales mix by month year, and here we're doing roast mix by month year. And so that's what we're going to use. We're going to use this data. I've already got it downloaded over here. And let's get started. We're going to graph roast mix changes across time. So I'm going to open up this file, which essentially is should be just a blank file. I'm going to get rid of all my data in here. So let's give it a sheet to fall back on. There we go. Here we go. So essentially we opened up a blank Excel workbook. We're going to go get our data, get data from Excel workbook. I'm going to bring up my file explorer here and copy the path. There we go. Then we're going to paste it in here. We're going to get our Lagrange data. We're going to basically go through the same steps. So we're demonstrating how to do joins. We're going to demonstrate how to use group by so that we can calculate the roast mix. We're going to demonstrate how to pivot and unpivot so we can calculate the roast mix. These are our 4 original worksheets. I'm going to load them into Power Query. And then I'm going to proceed to join them. So this is different than Vanessa's bakery because we don't have to go figure out, we only have 4 roast types, so we can fit all of those nicely on a line chart. We don't need to go figure out the top 3. So once again, we're going to start with sales detail flat file. That's our line items, and we're going to do a series of left joins. And so this is going to be very similar to what we did in class, except we're going to be changing the group by variables. So let's just go get everything into one file. So sales detail flat file will left join inventory on product ID. We see down here we have perfect matches. Okay. We'll expand the rows. Don't need product ID because it's right here. And we won't have it tack on the name of the table in front of the column name. So now we've expanded them. Oh, you see right here, our data is not clean. So I'm just gonna delete this. I could go into my inventory data has extra columns. And I always forget to delete these columns. And so this is a good practice. I'm just gonna highlight them all and go remove columns. And notice down here, I have 2 extra null rows. I'm just gonna go remove rows, remove bottom rows. You could also do this in Excel just by highlighting the rows and columns. All right, let's go back and try this again. We're gonna take sales detail flat files, merge queries as new, merge in our inventory, keep it at left join, Click OK. Don't need product ID. Now let's just go merge in sales orders. I'm going to do it on sales order number. Still a left join. We don't need sales order number. It's right here. If we did it, we'd be duplicating it because there's a sales order number in sales order and there's a sales order number in sales detail flat file. Now we can merge in customers. Customers. And our customer ID came in with the sales order, so it's over here on the right. Click OK. Expand it. We don't need customer ID because it already exists from our sales orders table. Now we've got them all together, and we'll call this all data. Remember, let's pause here. We're actually, our goal is to graph on a line chart the roast mix over time. So this is just a different flavor of sales mix. With Vanessa's Bakery, we did vendor mix over time. Hopefully you're getting the idea that we can define our piece of pie to pie ratio whenever we're doing a mix like this. There's lots of ways with our dimensions to slice and dice this mix. So I'm going to duplicate this so we can maintain our other data. And then let's say this is going to be our roast mix by month, year. Now we could do it by quarter, year. We could do it by year. When you get to your data visualization assignment, you might want to explore different time chunks. And the general rule is your mix across all, say, product or time frames, across the time frame you choose, whether it's quarter, year, all the mixes should add up to be 100%. All right, so I'm going to pull out the month year from my sales order date. We'll start with that one first. Okay, so we go add column, year, then repeat. Where's my sales order date? It's back here. I'm going to go month. Yeah, you can see over here on the right, I've got year and month pulled out. That's so I can group by them. But now each of these represents a line item because I started with sales detail flat file and I maintain that same number of rows. So I need to calculate my line item. Well, I don't need to calculate line item revenue. We're going to do this based on sales order quantity. So the filling of our pie will be based on sales order quantity right here. So now we want to group our data. We're going to group our data so that we have lines representing the pieces of each pie, which would be our roast mix, our roast type, filled with our sales order quantity, and then split out into chunks by year, month. So let's go ahead and proceed to our group by. I'm going to go to home, group by. We're going to do advanced so that we can do roast type, add another one and do year, add another grouping variable and do month. Then we're going to call this, we'll just call it quantity. It's really total quantity. And we're going to sum our sales order quantity across all roast types, years, and months. Actually, we're going to sum our sales order quantity inside each roast type, year, and month. There we go. We have 4 roast types, 12 years, and 3 years and 12 months. So let's just do a little check. 4 times 3 times 12. That's 144 rows that we're expecting. Does that work right? Let's see. Is everything validating right? Let's check. Oh, see, we've got 2 lights. We've got a medium. We got an espresso. So we have some issues with our data. And that's because we probably have some spaces inside here. So let's see if we can't fix this. We have too many rows. We have 170. So let's see if we can do find and replace. Replace values. We had two, so I'm guessing there's a space after light. So we're going to replace it with no space. Oh, we can't do it here. We got to undo this. Ready? So let's undo these rows. We're going to group rows. Let's go back to our inventory. Pull down on roast type. Notice we have two lights, so let's replace them here. Ready? So we'll go replace values. Light, space, replace with light. Okay, pull down. Now we're done. So it's fixed. Now let's go back here and let's see if it updated my... So see, it propagated through because I used my original inventory to combine these. And now I've only got 4. And now I've got 144 rows down here. And if I go back to my calculator, let's do that one more time. We're going to go 4 roast types times 3 years times 12 months. It's 144, just exactly what we were expecting. But it'd be nice now to calculate our roast mix. We're going to unpivot our roast type across the top here. Actually, we're going to pivot it. I'm going to get this right. We're going to pivot this roast type across the top. So we're going to go pivot. It says it looks like you want to take roast type and create a new unique column for every roast type value. That's 4 new columns. What do you want to stick underneath each column? And I want to stick the quantity. So I pivot it out. And now I have 36 rows, which makes sense because every row is a year and a month. 3 years times 12 months is 36 rows. And now I'm going to load this into Excel because it's going to be easier to actually perform the mix ratio in Excel using cell referencing. Wait for it. Here we go. So I'm just going to copy these. Well, first of all, I'm going to convert this to a range so I can use normal Excel referencing. So table design, convert to range. Then I want to calculate the total for each year month, which is just going to be the sum across all roast types. So that's the total number of units I sold of all kinds of coffee. I'll copy it down. And then I'm going to take these, I'm going to start with my medium roast type. I'm going to take those 4 roast types and paste them over here on the right. And I'm going to calculate my ratio. So underneath my medium, so my medium mix will be the number that I sold of medium, the number of units or bags I sold of medium divided by the number of bags I sold in total in January 2023. Now, I didn't lock things down. As I copy this to the right, I want this red cell to stay. That's in column G. So I'm going to put a $sign in front of G. I'm going to copy it to the right. And I'll just double check to make sure it's doing the right thing. I double click inside dark and I can see it's doing dark divided by total. That's the correct behavior. I'm going to copy it down. I can validate this by highlight all those. I see the sum is 1. That would fit the definition of roast mix. I highlight all portions of my roast in my whole pie and I end up with the whole pie, 1. So now I don't need this anymore. I'm going to copy these over and I'm going to hit paste special, Control Alt V. Actually, Control Alt V is, paste special. And then you can do values and click OK. And I delete the extra columns. And just because I'm a little paranoid, I'm going to go down and delete all the rows so I don't get any nulls. There we go. Now remember, this modified data is not in Power Query right now. So I'm going to have to go import it into Power Query. I'm going to go get data, except I'm going to use this from table or range. Mac users, you may have to highlight. You want to save this to make sure you've still got your workbook. And then you could go File, Save As, save it as a CSV file. And then you'd go actually open it from a file and get it in there. And I'll show you how you can actually import that inside Power Query because you're going to be pulling from two separate files at this point. But Windows users, you can just do from table range. Now this is my, well, actually I should rename this. This is my roast quantity. That's really what that is. And this is my roast mix by month, year. But now I want to unpivot my roast mixes so I can get them down in column oriented format. So this is roast type, and we'll call this roast mix. And now I have everything that I need to generate a line chart across time to show roast mix, how it changes over time. So I'm going to go close and load. There's my roast mix by year. Notice it already had a different, it just duplicated it. But it's not the same data. This is the data I originally imported into Power Query, and then I unpivoted it. And this is the data I'll create a pivot chart from. Insert pivot chart. All right, then let's move this to the right. And so one thing we need to do first is we want to combine our data, our date. So I'm going to insert this. We're going to go date. And we're going to use the date function. It wants the year, which is right there. It wants the month, which is right there. And then we'll just give it the first day of the month. So we can get this date. We could, let's see if this works. I'm going to copy this and paste values. And then I'll get rid of, and you don't have to do this, I'll get rid of the month and year. So now we've modified the data that our pivot table is based on. I'm going to come back here and notice it still got year, month. If I just right click in my pivot table and refresh, there we go. It's now updated it to date. So I'll drag date to rows, roast type to columns, and roast mix to values. Now watch this. Now notice the y-axis, but watch the height of the bars. I'm going to change this from sum to average. And I would ask you, the bars all still relatively are the same thing. The x-axis changed because it's a different value, but why are all the bars all relatively the same height between sum and average? I'll let you figure that out. I'm going to change this to where is it? Design. There we are. I got to click on the pivot chart. I'm going to change the chart type to a line chart. And here I've got it, it's collapsed into years. And so I can see how each roast type is changing by year. But if you take a look at this, let's just do a little math here, right? We're doing the average, and so it actually probably works out. If I take 0.11% plus 26%, that's 37%, plus 28%, that's 45, 65, plus 35%, that's 70, 100%. So they add up to be 100%. And that works because this is averaging them. And it kind of makes sense. If I change this to sum, things don't quite work out. I'd let you add those up. It doesn't add up to be 1. You can definitely see that here. But again, you need to be aware of what each of these marks, each of these data points represents, how many raw data rows is behind each. And if I wanted to get this to go out to months, I'm going to remove date, and I'm going to remove quarters just to make it easier, and I'll expand my years to show my months. And now you can actually see Espresso went from a larger portion of the pie to the littlest portion of the pie. Um, the medium, the yellow here, it looks like it's seasonal at different times of the year. The piece of the pie that is represented by medium changes. And then the gray here, you can kind of see over time, the light, I'm selling more and more of it. But we can only make sense of that if we know what the average profit margin is for each of these roast types. And so we could actually calculate that pretty easy. Let's just go to inventory and we'll calculate profit margin. So we'll just put profit margin. And our profit margin is going to be our profit, which is item price minus item cost, divided by item price, which is our revenue. So profit divided by revenue. Let's change these to percentages, just for kicks and giggles. And then we're actually going to create a pivot chart off of this. Not a pivot chart, a pivot table. We're just going to roll up our roast type, our profit margins by roast type. But we'll want to average, get the average profit margin. So now, this is a useful piece of information. Remember, let's go back to our pivot chart. Generally, if we click right here, generally our light is becoming a bigger portion of the pie, and our average profit margin is roughly 42%. Let's just prove that to ourselves. We'll do average. So 43, if we expand it out to a few more. So it's left roughly 42 2/3. So that's our average profit margin, and that's going to change as we sell different quantities of different roast types across time. But generally, overall, it's 43%. And so if we take a look at our light profit margin, it's 38%, which is lower than 42%. So interpreting this trend of our light becoming a bigger portion of the pie, that bigger portion of the pie at 38% is dragging down the 42% overall average profit margin. So in this video, I've showed you how to roll up a mix by roast type. It's the same process as sales mix, which is a product mix, except our grouping variable was month, year, and roast type instead of month, year, and product ID, which we did in class. And then I showed you how to reason about the changing mix, roast mix, using the average of the roast type profit margins. So we calculated the profit margin, and then we created a pivot table to average them together by roast type, and we said 38% is less than the average 43%. So then when we come back here to our chart, we see that light, which is 38%, is less than the profit margin, average profit margin is less than the overall average profit margin, 42%. So as this y-axis increases, in other words, it's a bigger portion of the pie, it's dragging down the overall average. So I showed you how to roll your data up in a couple of different ways. I hope that's helpful.